All right, so it's right at the top of the hour, and like good commissioning folks, we like to start on time, so we'll start right now. So thank you everyone for joining us here today. I'm sure there'll be a few more people that are trickling in because we've got a very special guest today. Tony Davies is the author of the Commissioning Handbook, and he's presenting a case study on too many cooks. So this should be very interesting. I'm very keen to learn from Tony's experience commissioning projects, and we can all learn lots from everyone else by these types of presentations. So please ask lots of questions. We'll have a Q&A at the end of the discussion. So it's best if you want to add your questions into the chat, then at the end, we'll go through each questions and we'll be able to learn from Tony and his very valuable experience. So thanks for joining us today, Tony. I'll turn it over to you to let you introduce yourself and take us through the presentation.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks very much, Paul. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you. I've just put together a presentation here for just to recount my experience in running a contract for the installation and the operation of a completions management system for a project in Kazakhstan during the mid-2000s. In that, I was the operations director for the contractor and responsible for managing the contract and dealing with the client. I'll give you an overview of what it was about. So in the late 90s, there was a project for the development of a large offshore oil and gas plant in Kazakhstan, in the Caspian Sea, and which went into the conceptual phase. So that was the pre-engineering design phase. And the intention of that was to start detailed engineering early 2000s, start the construction in the mid-2000s, and get production in the late 2000s. And at the time, it was classed as one of the largest projects in the world. So very big. You can see the project map here, I take it. So the water depth at the location, it was very shallow. It was between 3 and 9 meters. So what we had to do, or what the project had to do there, was to develop the field, create artificial islands to put on facilities for drilling. Can you see the cursor okay here when I'm moving it?
Yep, I can see the cursor.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so the facilities for drilling, so we had 1, 2, 3, 4 islands for drilling. And then you had a crude oil separation and reinjection plant on this big island in the middle here. So there was initial production facility on there to be connected by pipelines from these drilling facilities to get the feedstock, and then it would process the product for crude oil and gas, and then pump out by pipeline into into a refinery in Kazakhstan at the beach. And then from there, after, it would do the refining and exporting from that facility. And one of the construction technique, because it was in shallow water, and because the Caspian Sea is more or less landlocked, one of the main barriers was that there was no heavy fabrication facilities available in the immediate region for heavy construction. So what I had to do was to fabricate elsewhere and then somehow get it to the site and assemble it in bits at final location. And what they decided to do was to build it using modular techniques. So you can see on the island, there's certain modules that are shown there. So we use modular techniques rather than try and bring in tons and tons of equipment and try and stick build it on the island. So to do that, to construct it outside of Kazakhstan, you would have to prefabricate and try and pre-commission the modules before they go. But then to get them there was also going to be very tricky because, like I say, it's pretty much landlocked, but there was a particular route that you could take to get there. So this is what's shown in the map. There was a shipping route available, but what it meant was you'd have to tow flotation barges to take them from wherever they were going to get built, and they were going to be built in and around Europe and the Middle East. So they would eventually end up in the Mediterranean Sea, but then you'd need to get them to Kazakhstan, to the offshore site shown over here in the Caspian. So then you'd need to take this route through we call it the Sea of Marmara, and then into the Black Sea via the Bosphorus, through the Sea of Azov up at the top here, and then into Russian territory through what they call the Volga-Don canal system. So that is two very large rivers that actually meet within Russia, and then the Volga goes into the Caspian Sea. So you could actually get from the Mediterranean to the Volga, but very, very tricky. So because of that route, somebody trying to ask a question there? I can't. Is somebody trying to ask a question here?
I think that was just someone that had their mic off. Just reminder to everybody, if you could please put your mic on mute, then we won't have any of that background noise.
Okay. All right. Was that a question or was that background? You getting anything there, Paul?
I think it's just background noise. If you could please mute your mic, that would be appreciated.
All right, I'll keep going then. So this route then, because of the restrictions, what it meant was it would set the size and the limit of the equipment and the barges that would be able to get through that route. And the other issue was that the Volga-Don canal system was prone to freezing up, and still is. It freezes up between November and March every year. So you're very tight with timescales for getting through them. However, it did proceed that way, and what that meant was then you needed to look at building modules to do that. So here are the initial gas and separation and reinjection facility. There was 11 modules shown here, and they were placed for fabrication with 5 different fabricators in 6 different locations around Europe and the Middle East. So they're all scheduled to be completed between April and September 2006. And then what the fabricator was, his work scope was to build them, put them together, fabricate, construct, outfit them, test them, pre-commission, and then also, where possible, assist for the commissioning of equipment as far as you could do it on site. Okay. The team, I put together an organization chart here for the CMS team, because this is what we're going to talk about, and the completions management system team. So what you had was client personnel in red here. So they were a team, and they were based in Italy. And then you had, for the 6 different sites, there was a management team in each of those sites. And that management team, within the management team, had a commissioning manager and then the CMS department below that. So you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 management teams all doing similar things on different sites. So coming to the CMS specification, this is what we were asked to build. So it had to be internet accessible. Now, bear in mind, this was early to mid 2000s. So to have a system that was web enabled at that point was very unusual. And this was going to be one of the first times it had been done. But this is what they wanted, because they were building these things all over the place. They wanted a system that they could access over the internet from all of those locations that we looked at, and all the information would be on a Citrix server at that point. Okay, so the operating requirements shows you what they wanted the operation to do. So what we had to do, look at, was provide, install, and populate and test the system. It needed to be able to record and report on the quality and TI requirements, all the way through fabrication, testing, completion, and sail away of the barges. It had to be able to identify and report completion. They had to ensure that the ROK, the Republic of Kazakhstan requirements were complied with. Now that was very important, because Kazakhstan, they operate what they call a passport system, and if equipment doesn't meet the requirements that are stipulated on those passports, then it won't get accepted, it will get rejected. So that was very important. And then the final item on the overall requirement was to make sure that the product fully identified the work that was being completed and any outstanding work that was still to be done. Okay. The population of the data. So the data was coming from lots of providers, from the client, from the engineering contractors, from the fabrication contractors, from the vendors, and all of that would go into the client-operated IMIS, Integrated System for Information Management, conditioned and verified. So the support for that was to set up the system to do that, to train key users, to get the necessary familiarization and competency, provide a means where you could train additional ad hoc users, produce an easy to follow user guide, and a help desk, an online help desk to give quicker resolution of any problems, and then audit and review the system across all locations. So the specification for the completion system spelt out here, it covers provision, installation, and support of the system only. So all the users of the system, they would be employed through the client and the fabricators, and they would be trained by the system provider. Okay. The intended operation. So client and execution contractor were going to be given the responsibility for operating and populating the CMS. So that would include all the hard data, the soft data, the vendor data, all the information around that. They would then enter the status data and punch list into the CMS as all the work was being done on site, as the checklist was being completed. To do that, they had to nominate a number of people. They had to nominate somebody that would be the top dog, if you like, in the CMS organization. So that would be the CMS administrator. So he'd be given the unique access rights over above all the users. He'd be responsible for the download into the CMS, the verification, checklist population, and the day-to-day administration. And I'll put a star there to note that 5 separate execution contractors were involved in this operation. So the CMS provides this population process. So what we did was provide a detailed process to populate the database. And to do that, the process will include 30 essential areas for reference tables. Every item of equipment, every tag number would be downloaded. All of the tag numbers would be broken down into system, part system, and subsystem. For each of the tags, you would identify all of the check and test requirements. All this information is going into the CMS. The information verification, we would check that and confirm it via what we call yellow line checks. The yellow line check, what that means is you take the system and subsystem limits from the PIDs and then check against what's in the actual CMS is correct to the system and the subsystem. So that's very important to do that. And then for any engineering design updates that were made, we'd have to repeat that whole process again for all the design changes. So quite a large task. Another area of the population process which was very important was certain of the fields. We had to designate those as being mandatory, because if they weren't mandatory, you have information missing, and you wouldn't be able to run the system because it wouldn't have all the necessary data to be able to help you to do that. Excuse me. So this was a list of everything that we considered to be mandatory. So you can see on the chart there. So tag numbers, the description, and the system, the part system, the subsystem, the equipment type, the protection type, the loop type, the information certification, the sourcing, and all of those. Like I say, we chose those to be identified those as being mandatory. So, okay, once the population process was explained and set it up on site, everyone would be given a one-to-one training how to use the system. Then they'd have, after that, they'd have the access to the inbuilt document. So within the inbuilt document within the system was the user's manual and the training reference video. So, you know, if anybody needed to go back and forgotten how to do things, then it would all be there within the system for them. So that was quite useful. So at the time of the CMS contract award, it was pretty late on. The timing of on the chart here, the timing of the completion of badge fabrication. So each of those badges that we looked at earlier, they were scheduled to be completed in 2006. And then the offshore installation and hookup period between January 2006 to December 2007, and then the start of in November 2008. Now, the CMS contract that was issued, the tender inquiry came out in October 2005. The start of the CMS contract was in November 2005. So you can see that, you know, between November 2005 and April 2006, you know, you only had a few months, you only had 4 or 5 months to be able to get this thing up and running and populated. So quite a challenge, but not impossible. You know, we got the project based on that. So the start of the CMS contract was in November. We started software installation in December, and then the site training, and that would go through January 2006 to April 2006, and then the on-site training and support contract right through to December 2007. That was a program of events. And there's I don't need to go through that because we've just talked about it, but that was the chart showing roughly the phases and the people that would be involved in that and how long they'd be there doing that. So all of that then, you can see when it was all very friendly and all of the intentions were there. So from both the client and the CMS provider, so that to ensure that all the project requirements and the ROK requirements they'd all been studied and catered for. The tool was capable of managing the data, quality and security of the data. We'd also everyone had considered that. Everyone that was going to be involved with the system was made aware of what was required and where the responsibilities were. Those that were operating the system, they were going to be trained, and then everybody would be aware of the project program, particularly the dates for completion for sale. So to operate the system, CMS provider, just reiterating, responsible for supplying the software, and the client recruit their own personnel to run the system. So that was all hunky-dory at that point. But while all that was going on, the construction program started to slip. And because things did start to slip, and they started to slip badly, what it meant that because that Volga-Don Canal system was only available between April and October, then the barges wouldn't sail in 2006. That then caused a knock-on effect on the construction program because everybody was now going to be looking at that rather than completion. Completion took a back seat, so that was very little focus now given to the quantity and the quality information that was going into the system, and it was noted that all the sites were doing this. But from our point of view, from the provider's point of view, to be effective, all the system, like we said earlier, it would need to be consistent, it need to be correct, and all the information need to be populated. But now the site teams, in bold letter, the site teams were really deciding for themselves what information went into the CMS. So this was not very good at all. Additionally, not all the mandatory fields were populated, and even worse, the AeroCare permit and passport system, that was not happening either. So all of that was starting to bring up very, very loud alarm bells. Subsequently, the CMS in all the fabrication yards was becoming inconsistent. People were starting to leave the project; they were getting fed up with it. Some were being directed to other tasks. So we kept telling the client about all of these problems, and we even put together a proposal to correct it all. But they weren't really interested because like everybody else when they're building something, when you're constructing something, construction takes priority. Completion to commissioning, that's further down the line. Everybody says it's not important at this stage. We have to get the construction complete. Yeah, you can understand that to some extent, but you can't just give up on following completions and commissioning. So you have the situation now. So all the site teams now got their own opinions in selecting what information goes into the system, and that continued. That continued all the way through 2007, and it was only when the barges were getting near to completion, near to the rescheduled sail away dates, that people started to have a look and think, there may be a problem here, because it would affect the project once you installed the modules and try to connect them, because if the information wasn't there, then you had to start all again. So at that point, this is where the too many cooks comes into it. The too many cooks would be involved in changing ingredients of the CMS recipe, and we'll see what's going on very soon. So the client did start to begin to recognise the issues. The hookup was scheduled to commence in 2008. Now we're talking about them looking at the barges going out in late 2007. And when they looked at the status of the information that was in the CMS that was going to be handed over to the operator, you could see that the consistency wasn't there. It wasn't in accordance with the ROK requirements, and the equipment wouldn't be accepted. To show that, put a table together here. So this is the status of the data just before sail away of the modules. So total number of project tags, almost 93,000. When you look at the count of the tags with different allocations against them, so module allocation 92,000. So that wasn't too bad. It was only a little shortfall. But then when you start going down the list, with area allocation, only 69%. With ITR allocation, 5.8%. The ITR type A, so they're the inspection sheets, didn't know. The test sheets didn't know. Tagged with equipment type, only 5%. Tagged with source drawing ref, and you can see, you get down, and some of these fields are not being populated at all. The hookup tags, the pipeline tags, the LERs, the manifolds, ROK passport, none, nothing at all. So really bad shape, very bad shape. So yeah, a lot of correction needed then. So luckily for us, there was a special exercise authorized in 2008 to allow us to get the whole system realigned, corrected, and fully populated. And at that point, like I say on here, the client did appoint a special headward project completions manager to run the exercise, and I knew this chap very well. He was very good and very direct. He was the ideal man to do this. And what we had to do there, what he had to make sure that was done, was complete the population of the CMS with all the tags and fender tags and everything that we looked at in that count that was missing. Do the yellow line check of all the documents, synchronize the equipment type to the inspection and test record requirement, complete the population of all the CMS fields, which we looked at all the ones that were missing. So all of that needed to be done. And then the other thing, of course, was how did you do it? How could you do it? Because it was going on, it was still in fabrication at that point, and you couldn't really interrupt that. So what we had to do there was to build a copy system, download everything that was in the working system into the copy system, and then correct it all while it was offline, if you like. And then at some point, we'd go back and synchronize it with the live data that was being used. So, and that seemed to work very well. So that's what we did. But what happened was it took just about a year to do that, of quite a large team of people. So it really cost an awful lot to correct it, when it could have been done on site if they just got their heads down and populated it properly. So the result of it, of all the delays on the project, what it meant was that it was 3 years late because of all the issues in the fabrication delays and all the knock-on effects of that. So not very good at all. So summarising all of what went on, saying here, it's clear that the project didn't understand or embrace the importance of having a correctly operating completions management system. They didn't rigidly follow the procedure, the recommended procedure during the fabrication phase, and that then involved this huge correction exercise on the system, which took almost a year. Towards the end of this, saying it would be difficult to prove that having the fully functional CMS would have made any huge impact on reducing the lateness. It probably would not have a huge impact. because all the delays were caused with fabrication delays and then knock-on installation and hookup delays. But yeah, I mean, certainly the year of additional manpower and all the effort involved in doing that, it could have been avoided. It could really well have been avoided if it had been used as it was specified and designed. So coming towards the end now of the session, the lessons learned. So a number of lessons learned. Selection of the completions management system was late. Project was well in the fabrication phase, and there was only months between the contract being issued and the completion of fabrication scheduled. Data condition verification through IMIS, that didn't work very well. It was a bottleneck. More attention should have been given to that area. Changes to data, to systems. It's normal in major projects to go through changes. And if you have a robust change control project and regime, it handles that quite easily. But in this case, they didn't really have that. Web-enabled CMS available, having 5 different fabrication contractors in 6 different should not have presented any problems. And it shouldn't have, and it hasn't since, because everybody's on the web now, and these servers, central servers are available, so there is no issues in that at all. The accountability on site was one of the main areas of lessons that were learned. It quickly went out of control. All the different sites inputted different fields and created a huge mess. And really, the site commissioning manager should have been aware of that. Should have kept control of that and dealt with it. But having 6 different sites with 6 different commissioning managers, they've all got their own ideas of how things should run, and obviously they're all right. And only thing is when you try and put it all together, and they're really not. They should have worked to the system. Quality, quantity, type of information being input was very poor. It should have been managed better on site. The site teams weren't really aware of this issue with the permitting and passport requirements for Kazakhstan, which was unusual because the client made a big issue about that when they issued the contract. So it was surprising to see that the site teams didn't fully understand it. So obviously, if they didn't fully understand it, they weren't going to pay much attention. And yeah, that was a big area that could have been better. The program slippage that initiated the loss of redirection of completions personnel. So there was a lot of turnover of personnel. Then, of course, when you get the new personnel in, they've got to be trained up. They've got to be able to follow the process. And if they're picking up a load of junk already, then it's only going to get worse if they're not given the right sort of supervision or backup. And then the project management team, the client project and the site management teams repeatedly advised the problems, but didn't really give much heed to that until it was almost too late. And then it became a huge issue. So and then they decided to do the correction exercise. So that was it. So that's all the lessons learned from that particular exercise. Any questions?
Thank you, Tony. That was excellent. Definitely some good lessons to learn there. And definitely a lot of those lessons learned sound familiar, right? As early involvement in setting up of your CMS system. And a lot of projects struggle with that stuff. We are going to have a Q&A session right now. And I see that there's some questions being added to the chat. So please add your questions to the chat and we'll get them answered. Before we do that, I want to make sure everybody has a copy of Tony's book, maybe blurred there, but I have my copy here, Handbook for Commissioning Managers. So it's an excellent overview of the commissioning management process. So if you haven't already got your copy of Tony's book, please do that. The links to purchase the book were in the meeting invite that I sent out. So jump on there and get a copy for sure. I saw a few people let me know that they had already gotten a few copies. So that's excellent. So let's start the Q&A, and maybe I'll start because I have a question here, and then we'll go through the chat for any other questions that are asked there. Tony, you mentioned that the project was in the early 2000s and they were looking for a remote interface with internet connections. Now that's in 2000, that's pretty cutting edge technology and would have been, I imagine, technology that probably maybe was never used on a project in this manner, being used for the first time. So what were some of the specific or unique testing or test setups that you did to verify that technology and integrate it into such a complex project for technology that had really never been used before?
Yeah, well, I mean, we had a number of high technicians that were well versed in the concept and what had been done to date. So they knew about centralization. They knew about Citrix servers, and they knew that with the web, the way that it was at the time, that yes, you could do that. You could put information onto a central server and access it remotely from different locations. And so, with the knowledge that they had, and they were very, very good, and these were, like I said, very high technical people. They managed to build a system which actually worked, and it worked quite well. And at that time, I mean, I think there was only one other CMS company that was even looking at that. So we didn't really have much competition. We always had a system, a completion system, which was not web enabled. We used to have access-based systems, and before that, Excel-based systems. But of course, when you try and update those, you can update them on site. But when you try and put it all together, and unless you go around and gather all the information on USB sticks or something, then you can't really do that. But now with the web availability, it's very easy. You can sit anywhere in the world and do it.
Thanks for that. Okay, question from the chat here. Do you have any specific suggestions or controls to eliminate the defects, failures during pre-commissioning and commissioning?
Oh, sorry, that's a question for me.
Correct.
Yeah. How I don't quite understand the question.
So I believe they're asking for any specific ideas or concepts to control, eliminate the defects or failures that were encountered during pre-commissioning and commissioning from your experience. So a lot of the delays you talked about sounded like fabrication delays, but those probably would have trickled into issues discovered during pre-commissioning. I think that's what the question's getting at.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, the thing is, for every item of equipment, there would be the fields for: is it installed? Is it tested? Is it inspected? Does it meet all the criteria? At every step of the way. I mean, that's all taken care of within the check sheets that are loaded into the system. So if there's an issue with the completion of the checklist, then it doesn't go to the system. It goes back to the person to get repaired, and it's only when the repairs have been completed that it will be checked off as being complete, and then it will go through as yes, it's ready to go. Same with commissioning. Anything that has any issues, is held back until such time as those issues are completed, and only when the issues are completed and signed off and accepted by the operator, then it's only then that it'll get the green light in the CMS.
Sounds good. There's a comment here looking for templates or other items here. What I'll do is, this is being recorded, so you'll get a copy of this recording. You can watch the recording again. If there's any follow-up questions, then by all means reach out to myself or reach out to Tony, and we'll see what we can do to provide to help. Hamid is wondering if you have any suggestions on CMS software packages, maybe ones you've had experience from in the early 2000s, or maybe some of the more recent developed CMS software systems that you've had experience with or know exist for some of the cutting edge technology that we should be applying to our projects.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a lot. It's in fact, it's almost to the stage of there's too many. You know, there's when we kicked off, there was maybe another one or two, but now there's lots, there's tens of them. I mean, you know, I can go through and give you the I can give out the names of the vendors of each of these systems. To do it online while we're on it would take too long. But there's at least 24 that are good ones that you could look for.
Yeah, it's surprising how many there are. I think last time I counted, I found 27. So there's definitely a solution that meets your needs. And Hamid, check out if you log into the members area, we've got a section there that lists a bunch of the different software that's available. I think that list of 27 is all available there. We've got some case studies and reviews, and there's lots of good information to help you evaluate which one might be good for your project. So definitely check that out.
Yeah.
So next question from John. He was asked the other day, what does good completions performance look like? What, in your view, would be your key points and specific KPIs to measure in what commissioning completion success would look like? Okay,
well, I mean, what you need to do is build your own dashboard really to suit that. There's several ways you can do it. You can look at the whole project and say, well, do I want to know the state of every item on the project, or am I going to look at particular systems? Are we going to look at particular equipment? Do we know what's in that? Do we want to look at all of the equipment, or do we just want to look at part of it? Do we just want to look at when the equipment has passed its test, or do we want to only look at when the system's ready for? There's lots and lots of things that you can do, and especially now on these dashboards that they have, you can customize them. You can customize them yourself. I mean, the system that we built had that facility. We're talking like 20 years ago here, because it was built by completions people at the time. Then it was they knew exactly what areas they needed to look at and what areas were important and which areas that they needed to report on. So all of the reporting is built that way. But now, like I say, with all the modern advances in the technologies that they're using, you can very, very quickly program all of that into the system to suit your own needs. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of things you can do with it.
Yesabel has a question. Did you use the CMS to track the check sheets at the module yard? Did your CMS have that capability in the early 2000s? I know a lot of the systems now do have that capability, although there's sometimes resistance from contractors, manufacturers to want to engage in the CMS that early. But what are your thoughts or experience if you used the CMS to track check sheets at the module yard?
Yeah, we did, and again, it was the way that the system was built. You could look at what the system contained, and then within that system, what equipment was in that system, and then within that piece of equipment, what were the check sheets in that equipment, and then within those check sheets, what tests, all of that information, you could get that even then, because like I say, it was all the information that you've got in the CMS. It comes really, or it goes into the check sheets. It's a two-way. The information, some of the information goes into the check sheets to get everything populated. But then when you're in the field and you're doing the tests and checks, then the information that you put into the check sheet goes back into the CMS. So you have to have it being able to work that way as well, so that you know what you have to do and you know what's been done and it's been signed off. So yeah, you can't really have a CMS without the check sheets.
Next question is related to the discussion that always comes up on partial mechanical completion. When we put our systems together, we define what system completion is, but there's invariably pressure to accept a partial completion to move forward with some sort of testing. So how can we understand that partial completion by ITR in ways in one system, or what's your best advice when that discussion arises for partial completion?
Yeah, I mean that is going to be down to the commissioning manager. He's got to take the responsibility of being able to say, we can safely commission this item of equipment up to this point, but to do that we're going to need this, and this. We're going to need these utilities. We're going to need these drainage systems. We're going to need this pressurized, this electric. We're going to need all of that. So it's down to the commission manager to first of all put together his proposal for commissioning a partial system. Then really you should go through the risk assessment with peers on the project and with the safety departments to make sure that what you're intending to do is going to be acceptable. It's going to be safe. It's not going to cause any issues. That is the most important thing. Once you've got the clearance to go ahead and do that, then again you can set that within the CMS. You can make a special case of this is going to be a part system, and this is what we're going to do with it. So straightforward, but yeah, that really down to the commissioning manager.
Lots of good questions. Please add some more into the chat. I've got a question. You mentioned that this project took place in a very cold environment. I've had some experience working in cold environments, trying to do fiber splices at -40 and testing very delicate equipment. What's been your experience in the cold? What were the unique challenges presented for commissioning in cold environments?
I mean, certainly the environmental issues, the fact that if you don't really want to be going out at -40 with a pair of overalls on, and I mean that to start with is one of the main issues. Make sure that you can function, let alone the equipment. As long as you can function, then you can conduct the tests. But if you can't function, then there's no point in even going out the door. So, wrap up warm, I would say.
Yeah, it was so cold in some environments that we couldn't even shut the trucks off because the batteries would freeze in the time that they were off. So definitely unique challenges in cold, which is maybe the opposite with a lot of people have experienced testing in hot environments, but climate definitely presents a challenge because a lot of these projects are in remote locations for sure.
Sure, yeah. Then the other side of that is if you are in a remote location, and you have to transport yourself from one place to another, then to make sure that all the vehicles that you're using are capable of doing that. Because I've been in Kazakhstan, and you see vehicles freeze up. So if you're out on a remote site working, and then you try and get back and the thing won't start, then you're in trouble. So
Definitely challenging for sure. Okay, another question. So projects, the tension or relationship that exists sometimes between construction and commissioning groups can get challenging, particularly like you mentioned, as things start slipping and the completion takes a back seat, right? The construction is the focus, like you said. But then you mentioned people start leaving, they get fed up with the project. Projects can often start out with the best intentions, but then end up in these situations when things aren't going well and people are leaving.
Yeah.
What do you do in those types of situations? What are your best thoughts or recommendations to try and at least keep commissioning prevalent in everybody's minds and still focus on the end so that the project doesn't disintegrate into chaos?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like we do on this one, keep on to the client about the importance, but the client is plays the big part in it, because they're controlling the budget, they're controlling the money, and if they turn a deaf ear to this, if they're listening to the construction guys, then it's going to be very difficult to convince them otherwise. Best thing that you could probably do is offer them assistance if they're struggling, because they won't want to see the job going down the pan. But at that point, when the construction, it's very difficult. When the construction slips, then everyone's jumping on that, and to try and convince people that they should be looking at the completions, they should be looking at the commissioning. Don't forget about that. It really is very difficult to do that. What you really need is somebody on the other side that does understand it, and does, and on the client side, that does understand it, that will listen to you, and does have the necessary clout to be able to make things happen. If you're the contractor, it is very, very difficult to make those cases. I thought. I mean, even on that particular one that we just been through, we offered the client, we can help you out with this. We can, but they didn't really want to turn away from the construction, and they didn't really want to pay any more money to get people to do that. And we can't do these things for free as a contractor. So yeah, difficult, but just keep on at them.
Question from Roberto, and I'm not sure I completely understand the question. What do you recommend for commissioning new technology? If you want to add anything to that in the chat, Roberto, I assume you're looking for guidance on new systems or maybe technology that hasn't necessarily been developed before on a project, something cutting edge or groundbreaking on a project. Maybe we'll add that if that's the line of questioning that you're looking for, kind of new technology, it's one of the things that Bent Flivberg brings up in his book on kind of uniqueness bias. There's always a kind of a thought in people's mind that their project is a unique, special snowflake, and that can be the case if you're building something like the James Webb Space Telescope that's never been done before. It could be groundbreaking technology, but for 9 out of 10 or 99% of projects, it's likely been done before. Like oil and gas is pretty well established in what's been done before. wastewater treatment. These plants exist all over the world, and we definitely don't want to get stuck in that uniqueness bias, thinking that our projects are unique and we can't reference others. So we definitely want to learn from other projects, exactly like we're doing here, to take those lessons learned and apply them to their projects, despite even thinking that our project is unique and specific. Maybe that helps some guidance. I don't know if you want to add anything else there, Tony.
Yeah, I mean, the new technologies, when you look at, for example, over here, wind power is quite big now, and you know, all these green energies. But when you look at the processes that are involved, and when you look at the equipment that's involved, it's not that much different to anywhere else. It's just bigger, and more of it. But the processes are, you know, the commissioning process is identical as it would be for an oil and gas or a chemical. You know, you install it, you test it, you commission it, you start it up. Yeah, it's that process is going to be exactly the same. The equipment will be different, but the process will not.
And I can see John's added with reference to recommendations for use of smart JBs to improve schedule and interfaces, early loop checking earlier in the construction environment. That helps clarify what type of new technology he's referring to. So something like smart JBs.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, another question. CMS system included preservation ITR checklists by subsystem?
Yeah, exactly the same. I mean, what and I think I touch on that in the handbook is you have things like what we call A sheets for pre-commissioning, B sheets for testing, C sheets for commissioning, and R sheets or P sheets for preservation. But they work in the same manner. That you know, for each item of equipment, you'll have a preservation record which you need to go through, similar to a test record, but in this case, you're not testing it, you're preserving it. So the CMS will handle all of that as well.
Question on steam turbine power plants. I don't know if you have any suggestions or ideas and comments on any of the primary obstacles or problems that are faced with this very particular system when in the construction phase.
No, I've not. I don't have any experience in steam technology, so I can't really comment on that.
Best thing is maybe ask that question in the members area and see if there's over 1,700 people that are in there now. So I'm sure there's someone that has experience with steam power plants, turbines that might be able to answer your question. So shoot that one in there and hopefully we can draw on others' expertise. Would you recommend to set up the CMS during the feed phase?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, there's lots of things you can do during the feed. Again, it depends on the client and how much they're willing to go ahead with it, how much they're willing to invest in it. But I mean, there's all sorts of things you can do in feed that will help immensely when it comes to detailed design, because the more you can do earlier, the better, really. And then it's just an iteration of what's already there and a refinement of the stuff that you've already got in the CMS.
Question from Roberto on lithium ion BESS commissioning. I don't know if you have any experience or comments on that. He mentions that just a few hours ago, there was a digital reality that caught fire.
No, it's again, I've not any experience in that area.
This looks like another very specific question. I don't know if you have any insight or guidance on the ideal is a laser more ideal to use compared to a manual dial indicator when aligning the turbine and compressor?
Yeah, I would say yeah, because the manual way of doing things with the DTIs, the dial test indicators, it's okay and it works well. But when you're wanting to do the dynamic testing, they're not so good for that. But the laser ones will pick these things up, no matter how fast or slow you go. So if there is an issue, then you'll be able to pick that up quite quickly. So yeah, lasers the way to go these days. I think DTIs have been more or less thrown in the scrap heap.
All right, let's try and squeeze in one more question here before we conclude right on the hour. You mentioned several lessons learned on the project. Is one of the lessons learned, or do you think in this particular case, if we backed up even one step further to the selection of the fabricator and the selection of the installer during the procurement phase, during that selection, ultimately what you listed there was that there was manufacturing delays, fabrication delays, and installation delays. Would or could potentially selecting or having a more robust procurement process to identify people that can actually meet the fabrication schedule, that have the high tech skills to deliver, is that ultimately where the wrong selection of that individual was made, where they couldn't actually deliver on what they promised?
Yeah, I mean, quite probable. We're talking 20 years ago on this, and like I say, things have moved on quite a lot since then. And companies have become more slick than they used to be in the way that they operate. And you have these like procurement chains that are fail safe. You don't use so much equipment these days. The manufacturing, everybody now is a lot better at manufacturing things, fabricating things. So it has improved lots over the years. I don't think you would find, and a lot of people these days are getting more focused on commissioning. Back then it was, commissioning would start 3 months before the startup, whereas now people do look at it. Oh, yeah, start to look at it quite early on. It's things are a lot better than they used to be in that regard. And it's things like this, that help with that. The more people that are involved with, putting these forums together, then the better things get. Everybody benefits from it, and then for the people, you see, you've got 1,700 people in there now, so that's great. Try and get 1,700 people, commissioning people together 20 years ago, and you just couldn't do it. Again, with the modern technologies that are available, it's a lot easier. LinkedIn, these sort of things, the forums, people keep in touch.
That's a good point, right? Sharing information and knowledge is the only way we're going to help people understand the importance of commissioning on projects. So
Absolutely, yeah.
the internet provides us this incredible communication tool to do that. So we definitely need to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're pretty much at the end of our hour here. So maybe let's conclude for today. Tony, this was excellent. Appreciate it. I see lots of comments in the chat. People are thankful. Great discussion. Lots of good questions and lots of good information from you. So really appreciate you doing this presentation today.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that there's still chat going on. So, if there's anything else that you want to fire across for me to look at, then just let me know. I'll have a look at it.
So where can people go to get in touch with you, learn more about the books, the offering, the handbooks that you have, or ask any further questions?
I'm on LinkedIn. Just look for me on LinkedIn and contact me there, and we can organize it that way.
Sounds great. Yeah, so definitely reach out to Tony if you have any questions from this discussion or anything related to commissioning. And I'm happy to share information. Tony's happy to share information. The more people that understand commissioning on projects, the better our project outcomes will be.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining. Have a great day. You'll get a link to this replay once it's done recording here, and be sure to check it out, share it with other people, and spread the message of commissioning. All right. Have a great day, everyone.